Welcome to the Progressus video on expense sheet entry. Access and create a new expense sheet by choosing Open Expense Sheets. Click New. Tab through the expense sheet number, and it updates with the document number and your resource number. Change the expense date and posting date if desired. Enter expenses on the detail lines of the expense sheet. Select the project and task by typing the ID or using the lookup feature. Additionally, enter the date of the expense. The expense payment type determines the transactions created for this expense. The expense type of company paid will create a purchase invoice to the credit card vendor. Employee paid expense type will create a purchase invoice to the resource. The expense payment type code can be configured to fit your organization's needs. The list shown in this video is just an example of the options you can configure. The code chosen in the number field identifies the type of expense and determines which GL account is used during posting. I am selecting hotel for this expense. The list of expenses can be defined and configured for your company. Company-paid expenses are associated with a credit card to ensure the purchase invoice is created for the correct vendor. The hotel was charged to my company's American Express card. Enter the cost for the hotel. Enter an additional line for meals. This expense is employee paid, and the employee will have a purchase invoice created to reimburse them. I am selecting a different expense payment type code to designate the meal as employee paid, which was paid out of pocket. Notice that the cost automatically defaults for this line. This means you can set up per diem rates or specific cost rates for expenses like meals or mileage. In this example, I'm changing the cost for this meal. The price also has a markup applied. The price can be equal to the cost, a fixed rate markup, or a percentage markup. I'm adding a supporting attachment for my hotel expense. This attachment will carry through and appear on the sales invoice page. Attach the file using Browse or drop the file into the link. Totals show for the expenses for easy understanding and validation of amounts. Submit for approval and processing. Your expenses are now ready for approval. The approval levels required are based on the timesheet configuration linked to the resource who submitted the expense report. Expenses appear in Level 1 approval for the project manager based on the project. They are automatically routed to the correct project manager for review and approval. The project manager can approve or reject the expenses. If rejected, the expenses will return to the resource's expense report for editing and resubmission. Drill down to see details and attachments by clicking on the amount. The attachments can be viewed within the approval pages. Close this page to return to the main approval screen, where you can view all expenses waiting for approval. Approve the first line by clicking Post. Approve the second line the same way. Both can be approved at the same time if desired. Switching to Level 2 approval displays the page for the Resources Line Manager. This view defaults to Resource because the supervisor is expected to review the entire expense sheet, not individual lines. Reminder: not all approval levels shown in this video are required for your organization. You can define which levels are needed in the timesheet configuration. When you click the amount, you can drill down to see all the expense lines included in this expense sheet. It's a quick way to review the details before approving. Approve both lines or reject as appropriate. Level 3 is the final approval stage, and it's designed for project executives. At this level, you'll see all expense lines before posting. This step is typically handled by someone on the accounting team who reviews all expense sheets for accuracy. Post All will complete the approval. Let's review the status of the expense sheet. It can easily be accessed via the expense sheet queue. Notice the status says, Waiting Posting. If the expense sheet was still in the approval workflow, it would display something like Waiting Project Executive Approval, or whichever approval level is required. Each line in the expense sheet shows its own status. This makes it easy to see exactly where the transaction is in the workflow, so you know what's needed to complete the process and get it posted. The final step in the project workflow is posting the journal. This step may be optional, depending on your company's configuration. Many organizations prefer to review the journals created from expenses before completing the final posting. If the accounting team finds an error in the journal, they can reopen the expense sheet and reprocess it. The attachments are also visible within the journal. Post the journal to create the purchase invoices for payment of the credit card vendor and reimbursement to the employee. Let's go to the journals to review the purchase invoices. Choose Purchase Invoices. The same data can be located using the search option. The last two lines of the purchase invoices were created from the expense sheet. The first line is for the credit card payment to the vendor, and the second line is to reimburse the employee. Thank you for viewing this demo. For more information or to schedule a live demo, please do not hesitate to contact us using the provided information. You can also access more detailed information about Progressus expense sheet entry and approval by scanning the UPC code and using the online help.